Right, we're here for a work session to discuss the discussion and board direction on the effect and timing of ordinance number 12/2024 and 02/2026 relating to capital investment fees for existing approved developments. Megan Smith, Deputy Public Works Director, will present on our work session item.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. I have with me Cody Bird, Director of Planning, and also Nick Redavid, our Finance Director and Town Treasurer. This is kind of a joint effort. I'll let them take some of the credit. So I will. I'll spread it around. So tonight's discussion is really a policy discussion, and the staff is looking for to receive board direction on a couple of items that we'll get to. We're really focusing on how to apply updated capital investment fees to projects that are already in the pipeline while trying to balance predictability for development and also financial health, of course, of our utility funds. So we are going to be looking to get feedback from the board. If you would like us to bring back the ordinance that you've already seen, if you're looking for a revision to that ordinance, or if you're looking for staff to come at this from a different direction altogether. So we'll get through that discussion. Kind of the core issue is that we changed impact fees on January 1st, 2005 with Ordinance 12/2024. And then we changed impact fees, updated impact fees again on April 1st of 2026 with that ordinance number 2/2026. And that was kind of missing as we're growing and developing as a community, increasing transparency of our processes, all of that really identified there was a bit of a missing piece in that ordinance update, which is how to extend these or how to assess impact fees for projects that meet a certain set of criteria that may have already met some development requirements or met other milestones in the pipeline for development. As we know, bringing a project to development is not just buying a piece of land. There's a lot of infrastructure that has to go into it. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of upfront capital costs that go in from a development community to get that started. And changing impact fees can really have an impact on the timeline of how those developments can come to fruition. So we had proposed, after hearing from our development community at a board presentation, staff did bring back a proposed proposed ordinance of 4/2026 with some criteria and a timeline around how we would define or who would qualify, right? So who would qualify for a locked-in impact fee, and then for how long would they qualify for that? So we had created a definition of a pipeline development with projects meeting an objective set of criteria, and staff intentionally framed this effort in a way that it would apply to all potential or buildable lands within the GMA or within the town limits, as opposed to a single, one-off developer agreement or what have you. So it would apply to residential, commercial, any of those buildable lots. So if those projects had met prior to April 1st of 2026, either final plat approval or recordation, that's a new word for me, development or public improvement agreements executed, or a complete building permit submitted to the town. Really trying to define those very clearly, and so they would apply across any development that would come in. The proposed fee timing that was proposed in that evaluation or in that ordinance was a lock period of 4 years, locked in at the previously adopted impact fees that went into effect again on January 1, 2025, with then a full transition to the impact fees then in effect in April 1st of 2030. So full transition to the impact fee then in effect on beginning of year 5. Staff did review, well, just to clarify, that's what this ordinance would do, something it would not do. I just want to be clear. This wouldn't waive fees. We would still be collecting impact fees. It would not change existing agreements. It really just clarifies timing for a specified set of developments that already meet a clearly defined set of criteria. Staff did look through a couple of other options related to the timing or how to phase this in. We looked at like a 3-year lock or a 5-year lock. We also considered a stepped approach. this much for 2 years, and it would increase by 50% in year 3, or there's a couple versions of that. We did come in with a recommendation of that 4-year lock and a full transition to the then in effect impact fees in year 5, really providing predictability for those projects that have already advanced, allowing us to continue to support development activity. It is a bit simpler to administer. That is just a reality. We do have to consider that. We're not just like leaking with extra staff. So it does need to be something that we can track and administer readily in town. And it includes a very clear sunset period. So it's very defined with the goal of trying to keep revenue flowing during that transition period. So we did provide some financial analysis to the board that's included in your packet. One of the things I do kind of think I'd like to emphasize with this analysis is that really you can see that the main driver for funds into the utility funds is about the timing of permit activity, not necessarily the level of the fee being charged at that point in time. And that is in part because the town has taken the steps and the efforts over the last 5 years to go through and right-size our impact fees already, right? So we've brought things up pretty substantially, even in that 2025 adjustment. And so it's really a lot about permit timing and still keeping permits coming in on some pace. So scenario A that you see in your packet, that was modeled at a reduced set. So it was an assumed reduction in permit activity, assuming fewer permits move forward, all paying that 2026, the adopted impact fee rate that was adopted effective April 1, 2026. And it does result in some lower near-term fund balances. Now, the reality is the outcome of I do kind of want to highlight, we modeled 2 scenarios, and they are bounding scenarios. This is not a prediction that we think will, I can guarantee you what actually comes out in the next 4 years won't look like either one of these exact scenarios. We were just trying to get a handle on both ends of the spectrum, knowing that if we fell in between there, then at least we would have an idea of what's coming. So that really resulted in some lower near-term fund balances, which would likely result in some project deferment. That's how we would come up with being able to mitigate any fund balances going below 0. We're not going to let that happen. Scenario B did track with more. It was modeled with more permits being processed, with most of those paying the lower 2025 fee during their lock period. It's going to reduce the risk on rate pressure. It does provide a stronger near-term fund balances and some continued ongoing revenue. Really, either of these scenarios, even kind of bounded at the extremes, are financially manageable for the utility funds. Don't want to propose that the sky is falling under either scenario, because it's not. There will be modifications that would have to be made to the CIP and where we can to the operations budget to ensure that we meet our fund balance requirements for sure. But we can do that. I did provide some of that supporting context, right? So there's 4 appendices in your packet. I summarized the permit activity fee that was modeled. That was something that was missing from sort of the information provided to the board when we brought this ordinance forward. So it was a little hard for you to understand exactly what numbers we were talking about. So the number of permits modeled in each year is included in that, as well as a summary at your fingertips of what those impact fees were in 2025 versus 2026 impact fees. And, really what we're looking for in this discussion and to bring for staff to have what they need to move forward and determine if we're coming back to you with this ordinance, a different ordinance, or something in between, is framing this around it's, again, I want to reiterate, it's not really just about the fee level. It really does, the timing of receiving some of this does impact the fund balances. And the reality is, we know, and Mr. Byrd has, makes these statements often, this is a means that staff, that the town, that the board can do to help, but it does not guarantee, even if we do create this opportunity to lock in, doesn't guarantee that those buildings come in, right? So we're helping create an avenue that could help. But there's a lot of outside factors that go into deciding if, a multi-million-dollar project's going to get off the ground or not. This is one that's within our control to try and help. But it's definitely not trying to say that, it'll bring things to fruition that are currently stalling. So just to keep in mind. That is kind of a quick overview. I didn't put together a slideshow. You have all the information in the packet. But really, I'm anxious to get kind of to the discussion and some of these board feedback questions and around if this really is the right policy tool. Have we structured that policy tool appropriately in your eyes? Are there any, is the eligibility criteria clear? Is the transition period okay? And then if there's additional direction or information that you would need before being able to weigh in on bringing back an ordinance, this one, a revised one, or a different approach altogether. I was like,
as we're asking the question, did anybody else want to speak?
Happy to answer any questions. I think Megan did a really nice job presenting it, and I don't want to eat up additional time repeating what she said.
So as we're discussing this, I want to be super clear of my expectations of my board. This doesn't relate to an individual developer. We shouldn't be referencing individual developers or individual developments. We should be talking about the criteria as shown as recommended. This isn't based off of the goodwill or interpretation of personalities. This is really based off of how we meet our strategic targets, our goals, and how we reference those within this potential ordinance. So I would prefer and ask that nobody reference the name of any developer in this. We just discuss or ask questions for understanding and maybe ideas of how it relates to our strategic plan. Okay. With that said, anybody want to or have any questions? Yes, please.
Well, let's see, just a couple quick questions for you guys as far as future changes to impact fees potentially. So I guess my question would be, obviously this ordinance addresses what we had passed in December. Do we, as far as future developments, obviously we look at impact fees basically every year as far as that goes, whether we make changes or not is one thing or another. But I'm just trying to understand for the future, do we want to, apologies, sorry about that. I'm just kind of thinking of what mechanism we use to lock these in the future. I think last time we were in front of you, it was the April 9th meeting where we were discussing, or I had brought up the question of potentially including these in developer agreements going forward as far as next. So I'm just curious from staff's perspective, what mechanism do we use to do lock-ins going forward so that we don't have one-off ordinance or something like that every year?
So a couple of approaches that staff has considered. One is there in future ordinances, when we bring forward impact fee changes, do we include something similar? Now what that would do would create this sort of revolving door is not the right, but this sort of stacked tracking that staff would need to track. So that is an option. A second option or a second consideration is that as the town continues to stay on top of all of our rates and fees on a very regular basis, and you get to a place where you are at a kind of inflationary adjustment, right? Or a construction indices adjustment and nothing more. At that point, I don't know that this sort of locking scenario is needed, right? Inflationary increases should be expected by development and their pro forma development. It's when we maybe restructure impact fees, which we did with this ordinance. We separated, we have this non-potable one now, and then those that are on potable for irrigation. So that's a big change. And so it's more in this idea of there being a large change with this impact fee ordinance that went into effect April 1st. And then subsequently, we have also talked about that it is appropriate. We did some research on what other regional communities do. and it's all over the board, because there's no one size fits all solution, but a lot of them were related to specific development agreements where that kind of language is embedded in a development agreement, which is a possibility.
Yeah. And one of the biggest factors for development and their financing is predictability and certainty. And timing is perhaps one of the largest factors other than just cost in that equation. When we've made changes to fees in the past, that rang true with our home builders. Affects commercial too. They want to know when we start to pencil out our project, what are our anticipated costs? And when we do a legislative change to our impact fee that applies across the entire town, something like the ordinance that was in your packet would be an appropriate legislative reaction for this is going to impact everyone in the same way. Therefore, a timing clarification on timing of how that rolls out would be appropriate for a legislative change. If there's a specific subdivision development that has other unique considerations to it, we already enter into development agreements. So a more specific 3-year vested lock period for that project on its project merits would also be possible. It does create some additional tracking that we would have to consider in how that happens and the larger equity pieces to make sure that we're being fair to all development proposals for what's being considered. But we'd have the ability to do both. The reason this came up in this context where the ordinance I think works best is because it is a legislative fee and a legislative application for that fee.
Understood. And I think that makes a lot of sense. I just kind of wanted to bring it up for staff consideration, obviously, as we move forward. Otherwise, I kind of stick with the same comments that I made last time, which is that I'm generally in agreement with this, but I was kind of also wondering if you could give me some understanding as far as how you guys came to the 4-year instead of say a 3-year or just for context basis.
It was in response mainly to knowing that the permits that are listed that were included in the like appendices C and D, most of those lots are not don't have infrastructure to them yet. And so that's generally speaking no less than a 2-year lift. And so then you'd only have 1 year of construction time. And that was where the additional 4th year came in order to to acknowledge that it's going to take probably 2 years before somebody can get even to where they have a permit ready lot to start building on. So that would give kind of 2 years for building. And even then they likely, depending on the size of the development, may not be able to execute the full development in that timeline, but it would give them a little larger of an opportunity.
Understood.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but as part of that, yeah, I mean, we looked at 3-year, we looked at 5-year, we looked at a stepped. I think, that was where we landed in our discussion.
I was saying, even on the other side of it, the 5-year, we felt that was
Just
too long, and there wasn't an incentive to start action now.
Sure.
So.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the context on it. I think originally I had been kind of more in favor of that 3-year, but I think your context certainly provides some understanding on my behalf. So I appreciate the answers.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do have some questions, and I'll try my best not to mention developments, but I do know of at least 2 big developments that are on the books right now. I had a similar question to what Trustee Mason said about what happens in 2 years when we do another rate evaluation of impact fees. In an ideal world, we were to just pass this thing and it taken effect and, Bob's your uncle. I understand that I don't have a problem with the scenario B. I don't have a problem with the 4-year. I don't have a problem with what's being presented. I just want to make sure that this is just kind of a one-off kind of thing, and then we're not going to be reinventing this every couple of years when we do this. And I understand that our capital investment fees pay for those infrastructure projects and pays for the capital improvement plan. And quite frankly, our economy depends on housing, so that we can get those kind of things. I'm okay with it.
Okay. I do have questions regarding the potable options. So with our new impact fees, full potable systems are some almost $5,000 more for water utility. So that makes me wonder that the 4-year lock would actually be a disadvantage for some development. So my wonder is, and I haven't read, maybe I missed it in the actual ordinance, but is it necessarily a must do this, or you can opt into the 4-year lock or opt into current impact fees?
While Megan's thinking, or while Director Smith is thinking about that, I think it's also important to note that the applicability of this is to projects that have passed one of those thresholds.
Okay.
So a lot of because we looked at that also, where that 4 years of the current or the prior fees may not be beneficial for some projects. What we found was most of those projects that were on our minds were projects that have not reached one of those entitlement phases yet, and it wouldn't be applicable.
Mhm.
They would come in on the current fee merits based on that project's considerations.
Okay.
So the impact of the application for this is limited to mostly those that are in the progress and haven't reached that entitlement phase where the potable water for irrigation is necessary. And it'd be a benefit. The ones that the non-pot benefits would come into play are pretty limited in the number.
Okay. And I guess regardless, if any development plan was at that level, then they've already utilized, those impact fee amounts for their plans. So regardless of the point. So, okay, that was my question. Blackstone, do you have any questions?
I think Brian or Trustee Mason asked one of my big ones of, again, where did that 4-year come from? Trustee Cannon kind of touched on another similar kind of idea of mine that I want to be, again, pro business, pro development. I think that, again, if coming as a board of like, what's the vision for Wellington? Because I think that's what our role is. I think that's what we've all kind of planned out and said in the past. I just don't want to be, my hesitancy is like, are we so pro, one thing or another that we end up, kind of shooting ourselves in the foot or not doing our due diligence for other folks in the town. If the homework has been done on your guys' end, and this seems like you said, you looked at the scenarios, you looked at the impact, I'm inclined to say that makes sense to me, what you're saying. It's just a difficult decision. But I don't really have any questions. I more have concerns. That's kind of my piece. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
But I feel like my vote would be going ahead with, as you guys have proposed it, how it was proposed, was that last month or so? Because I do want to do that. I'm just cautious. And I also would not like this to be, like you said, every other couple of years, then the next people are coming back and being like, well, hey, what about us? I would really like, if we're increasing these fees for a reason, then it's because we have to do it. So that's I don't know.
Yeah, and I like the idea that it's reliable too. So it's not a negotiation for each development. It is something reliable that they can expect and research and understand. So I do like that part. The other thing is in my opinion, the last thing we should be doing is slowing down any of the existing projects that have already made progress. That's incredibly discouraging, for one. And keep in mind, every single rooftop brings additional sales tax, brings obviously increased property tax that funds us. So the sales tax, I mean, is, one of our top sales tax drivers is Amazon Fulfilled, and Kroger, all delivery services that households might do. So these are top drivers. These come with new rooftops. So it wouldn't just be the impact fee consideration. It is also a sales and property tax consideration. The discouraging of continuing developments could be very detrimental to our town, both near term and long term, if these projects don't progress as they were expected. So there's so many other factors hitting these developments as well. So if we could lessen the load or provide some encouragement, I think that would be a great choice. All right, we were asked to, yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just thinking something too. When you talked about, having concerns, I share those concerns that we're not going to be chasing something like that. And I guess the question I'm really looking for is, okay, how can we avoid this in the future? How can we ensure that our infrastructure funds are growing adequately? I mean, can you do things like, okay, we're going to implement this new impact fees. Will it take effect in 2
Some
years?
length of time, yeah.
2 years or something like that. Give people time to do some preparation and so forth. I always under the belief that okay, your impact fee or your tap fee goes up $10,000. They just pass that on to the buyer, which they're going to do anyway. But I understand that in the pipeline, how many houses we have available for infrastructure. I mean, for building permits now. I know that 2 big subdivisions don't have any infrastructure yet. So I guess I would maybe just kind of keep everybody in mind that maybe there's another solution out there, for long-term stability and sustainability of our impact fees. We're not trickling this in, because we did pay a lot of money for a study that says, you're short, you need this. And then suddenly we're like, okay, well, thanks for that. We're going to put it off for 4 years. That bothers me a little bit.
I think one of the suggestions that I would make moving forward for any impact fee update is clarity on the timing and effect needs to be a part of that first ordinance. I think that's something that we learned the hard way with this one. We've felt that before on prior impact fee updates where, large jumps, and the biggest complaints come from the home builders that said we had existing contracts written and now we have to absorb this. Trustee Cannon has it right. They're gonna pass that fee on to the buyer, and we currently have an affordability crisis where homeowners, the $10,000 that gets passed on to the buyer puts them out of the market, and they can't afford to move here any longer. So it has real impacts on our residents, not just the home builders. The home builders' profit margin doesn't change much. It's the residents that feel that impact. So clarification on the timing on the front end, I think that goes a long way. If this is something that's generally supported by the board, maybe treating that as more of a policy for any future impact fee changes, that clarity and timing is part of that original consideration where we didn't catch it this time. I think that would go a long way. I was going to say something else, but it was unrelated, so I'm going to pass.
Then I'll jump in right there. One of the things I was thinking, because of what I've heard from a couple of you is, ensuring that we're not back here again in a couple of years, having to do a unique one-off legislative approach to it. That goes to, and Nick and Mr. Redavid and Mr. Bird and I have had that discussion before. We would rather not do that either. And maybe this is, and so in my tenure here, almost 5 years in August, there's been several stop the bleeding, stop the hemorrhaging scenarios. And we're there. Before we had the outcome of this most recent rate study, even we were there. We have stopped that hemorrhaging. And so I'm inclined to believe that there shouldn't be these giant outside of, there's outside forces that can change things. So take that in consideration in my statement. But the biggest part of this, and yes, there was a large increase in the wastewater and that needed to be absorbed, but not near as much as that change as you had commented, Mayor Daley, around, almost a $5,000 increase going from what would have been potable to what is now potable. And that was because we made that determination as a structure change for the impact fees to allow a clearer path forward for more affordable development in those areas that have the non-pot. And so this was yet one more time that we're kind of changing the structure, that we're really trying to get to this steady state place where we're getting there slowly but surely. That I just don't, I would hope that we don't have those giant jumps anymore, because if we're reviewing them annually like we should be, and we're making some inflationary adjustments as appropriate, and we're doing that, then you're not having, a study every third year that says, well, you need a 20% increase. At least I sure hope not.
I get that. At the same time, we're putting that incremental increase in a 4-year hold,
Pushing that out a bit.
essentially. And at the end of
For a limited number.
For a
of
limited
permits.
number.
you have for a limited number of. I mean, what's the number we're talking about?
Well, the difference between 0 and 120. So I mean, you're talking about. I mean, that was that bounding scenario in that.
I mean, because
table one.
earlier we talked about. I heard that the developments we might think it would impact, it doesn't impact them because they're too far off. But I see this coming up again.
It's not exactly to your point, Trustee Cannon, but I think it's relevant that there are some projects that are in the pipeline, but not in the near term pipeline, that could come to fruition, that are going to be outside that 4-year lock, and they're going to be paying the then current fee. For the number that are within the 4-year window and realistically going to be under construction where they're pulling permits, it's not that we're foregoing the fee. We're allowing them to pay most of that fee and not just that last increment that was added in the most recent one. So it's not a zero number. Far from it. But I think that maybe helps in the context that it's really just absorbing the incremental change for the couple hundred lots that it would impact in today's pipeline.
Okay. So we're also discussing metro districts and so forth. Like, I know with the metro district, that initial loan, the bond issue and so forth pays for a lot of that infrastructure, which include the capital investment fees and so forth like that too. So have we considered the impact of metro district development, or allowing metro district development, what it's going to do to these? Because the metro district could speed up some of the projects that are kind of on the books.
If I follow your train of thought, those projects that would be seeking that additional metro district approval, this wouldn't apply to, because it hasn't passed a certain threshold for the applicability criteria.
Okay. All right.
I need to apologize earlier. I said potable versus non-potable. So it was opposite of what I said regarding full potable is increasing, or did increase 4-1 versus non-potable decreased. So apologies for that. I said exactly the opposite as I intended. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I actually related to that, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to see if you still wanted some clarity on
The third
you
question.
had asked about obviously under this ordinance, the non-potable system would remain at the 11,507 rather than the decreased 7,340. So I don't know if there's anything in the pipeline as far as that goes, but if there are, should we consider including an opt-out for those lots, or is that
Not even
maybe something
applicable.
we don't want to consider?
I think the point Mayor Daley actually made was those ones that are currently in process at that previous 11,500, they've already built their financials and they're are in process under that assumed higher amount than the reduced non-pot system. So that could be direction, but it's not going to change, to my knowledge, any potential building.
Something that came up a moment ago that I wanted to acknowledge is this, home builders aren't just hit by these impact fees. Library, parks, trails, everything like that is included in that. If we're adding on or tacking on $1,000 here, $5,000 there, another $1,000 here, and then approving new building permit requirements that make every house solar ready, we're adding bits and pieces. And then that's really going to hit the affordability for people moving to Wellington, which really our benefit and draw is our affordability compared to surrounding communities? So I think we need to consider what makes us attractive, and how we can, again, be more reliable to people who want to invest in Wellington. So, but I also, it was brought up to whether or not this only applies to water and wastewater, or if it applies to all impact fees and changes in impact fee rates. We will be seeing, capital projects for other funds in the near future that will likely find some need for additional investment or recalculate impact fees in the future. We've already talked about those upcoming. So whether or not this is applicable to all of them. But we're at the point, at this point, unless anybody has comments, we have 3 recommendations that have been requested of us. Unless anybody has any outstanding questions that you don't think you can respond to these answers.
I do have one.
Yes, sir.
Question, and I'm sorry to keep adding on to this kind of stuff. We know, or I would expect that when we do get around to sourcing an alternative water source, that the whole idea of impact fees will come into play in some regard to, covering some of the cost of, the buy-in, the infrastructure, everything that goes with that. Have we factored in maybe the timing with VITA and the 4 years, or are we?
No. Mainly because it's, currently
Not guaranteed.
pie in the sky as
Mhm.
far as the, town is concerned. I shouldn't say that, it's more real than that, but like we haven't had open discussion on it. We haven't talked about it. I don't know we don't have final numbers for that. We're still in negotiation. So no.
Well, I know that we're talking about period of time, especially with the step down period
With North Pooter. And there would also be a lock period with VITA as currently proposed. We are asking for, ability for a down payment and then subsequent payments to them in, much longer than a 4-year increment.
I was just curious how that might affect.
And
That variable, how it might affect the impact fees, the timing, the lock period.
I don't believe it would, and I believe kind of back to this 4-year lock period. I don't believe it is not even a 4-year lock period. Back to the number of available units that could be impacted, having met the criteria as currently defined in the ordinance, it wouldn't. It's a very small number. Yeah, it's pretty insignificant impact. Well, that implies we don't need the revenue. We do.
I think maybe another way to look at it, and Mayor Daley mentioned some of the other impact fees, like parks, to fulfill the parks or the approach master plan. We're currently working on transportation impact fees, and we'll be presenting recommendations on what impact fees changes might be needed for transportation related costs. We'll be able to model those as part of those fee nexus studies based on, and some direction from the board on, if this timing component needs clarity at the original ordinance adoption, we can account for that in the modeling projections that we do for our revenues, knowing that we won't get the full benefit of that impact fee until
Next
year
year.
3 or 4 or what have you. Then we'll know how to adjust the impact fees to account for the time. So having some direction from the board on how we want to handle this legislative act for impact fee adjustments down the road will help us model it so we get those numbers right in the first place.
I see 2 options before us, and the first question is the proposed ordinance of whether or not we're determining, okay. We have 2 options before us. Scenario A, reduce permit activity as expected by utilizing our existing increases in impact fees, or scenario B, where we utilize those previous adopted impact fees for a 4-year lock, essentially. So I'm hearing a lot of scenario B. So if I could get a thumbs up, sideways or down, whether or not you could agree with it, live with it, or are against it, just as a direction for staff. Okay, so we're gonna move forward and make recommendations to pursue scenario B. Other questions that we have. Well, I kind of answered both of those. So
Yeah.
we talked about the 4-year lock. So let's just talk about 4-year lock in addition to option B. Are we good for 4 years?
So,
Ed,
Okay.
good for, sorry.
Sorry, scenario B is.
There are 2 questions. So it's scenario B, and then the second question is 4-year. I think we acknowledged both of those, but. Good. All right, any additional information or revisions? Board considerations? I don't think so. I think we had an opportunity to learn more about this and the reasoning behind it. And I really appreciate you guys doing that. We're understanding more of the genius behind the recommendation. And I think that was what was really beneficial for us. So thank you for taking this time and preparing this. But I would love to see it come back.
Excellent. I think we have it on
Scheduled on the 14th.
on the 14th of July.
Fantastic.
Great.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I now call to order the June 9th, 2026 Board of Trustees meeting, the time being 6:30. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Thank you all for being here. Will the clerk please take roll call?
Trustee Blackstone,
Here.
trustee Moore, trustee Barrett,
Here.
trustee Moyer, trustee Cannon,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Here.
Mayor Daley.
Present.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you much. Are there any amendments to the agenda this evening? I have 2 to propose. Does anybody have any others? All right. I would propose that we delete from the agenda this evening resolution number 2026, a resolution authorizing funds for contractor services for water meter installation and the executive session. May I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the amendments to the agenda.
Second.
Second.
Will you please take roll?
Yes, Madam Mayor. And just for the record, that was trustee Blackstone with the second.
Yes, please.
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
trustee Barrett,
Yes.
trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daley.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you much. Are there any conflicts of interest on the agenda this evening? All right. We now move on to community participation. This is the time for public comment. Members of the public who wish to comment on non-agenda items, please sign in the sheet behind the podium and state your name clearly into the microphone. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to provide comments. On to our presentations. Nick Redavid, Finance Director and Town Treasurer, will present on the 2026 Q1 Treasurer's Report.
All right. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Trustees. I am Nick Redavid, Finance Director and Town Treasurer. Tonight's Treasurer's Report presentation will be the first look at the budget performance for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2026 through the first quarter. While this is an important benchmark for the year, given the size of our municipality and budget and the ebbs and flows of revenue and expenses due to several factors throughout the year, I want to stress that a review of the first quarter's budget performance is not typically enough time or data to indicate trends, concerns, or necessary changes, and no immediate action is being recommended. It is, however, important to be aware of the status and composition of the numbers at this point so that performance can be tracked and in context throughout the year. Before we jump into the budget performance, I want to quickly recognize the Finance Department for the hard work that each individual does to support the operations of the town. Controller Patty Lundy recently celebrated her 19th work anniversary with the town, making her the longest serving employee. With her wealth of knowledge and experience, she has had a significant impact on the functions and efficiencies in the finance department, implementing several controls and process improvements, and navigating system changes and enhancements to ensure proper access, accounting, and reporting are consistent and accurate. The finance department team, with administrative finance clerk Flip and utility billing coordinator Carly, are dedicated to transparency, accountability, customer service, and being responsible fiscal stewards for the community. Flip and Patty have taken an active role in the audit of financial statements for fiscal year 2026, which is currently in process with the town's auditor, Hinkle and Company. Trial balances were provided last month, and several items from accounts payable, accounts receivable, and human resources are being collected to be provided for testing. Additionally, Patty will be supporting the upcoming budget development season to assist leadership and departments during the process. I also want to call attention on this slide to an updated note regarding the reporting provided for the Treasurer's report for the first quarter of 2026. This report was generated on May 28th and includes all invoices paid through period 3 or March as of May 27th, 2026. A previous March report was provided to the board that was generated at an earlier date, and as you will hear in next week's Municipal Finance 101 presentation at the board's work session, governmental accounting standards allow for prior period adjustments, and as such may affect treasurer's reports previously presented and treasurer's reports presented in the future. Up first for your review tonight is the operating revenue and expenditures in each of the town's major funds. The revenues are those that have been received as of March, which do not yet include property taxes for the year and represent reduced water volume usage in winter months. Property taxes received in April, including some delayed funds from 2025, were nearly $1 million, correcting the budget performance in the general fund reflected here. Sales tax received in the general, street, and park fund is on pace year to date, which will be reviewed shortly. However, the accounting of the motor vehicle use tax revenue has been corrected in alignment with voter-approved sales and use tax language, ensuring each of the governmental funds is receiving its appropriate share, though it will have a bigger impact on the street fund in 2026. For the enterprise funds, it's not uncommon for the municipal utilities to be behind pace at this point in the year, as the new rates take effect on April 1st and utilization remains lower when irrigation is not occurring. The one trend that does stand out across the water, sewer, drainage, and park fund is the continued impact that the significant reduction in development has had on the contributed capital revenue in each of the funds. As far as operating expenditures, it's always great to see that funds are under budget, but I again want to provide context that several large expenses occur later in the year and are not yet reflected in budget performance. For example, the first quarter payment for the Larimer County Sheriff's Office contract, which was invoiced in April, doesn't reflect in the budget performance until the second quarter. Yet the annual payment for the Box Elder Basin Regional Stormwater Authority payment has been made for 2026, and that payment represents 99% of all expenditures in the drainage fund year to date. I do need to correct one amount on this slide, which will be amended in the packet tomorrow. The amount of the BBRSA payment listed should be $462,000, not $532,000, and my apologies. Digging a little deeper into the operating revenues of the governmental funds, as the revenue in those funds comes in the form of taxes and fees rather than charges for service like that of the enterprise funds, we have a more detailed view of the performance of the major revenue sources here. Again, property tax is not yet reflected in tax revenue, which is the largest category in each of the funds. Franchise fees are exceeding year-to-date projections thanks to large annual payments received at the beginning of the year, which will level out as monthly payments will continue throughout the year. As usual, and no surprise given the great Parks and Rec department and staff, recreation program fees are on pace to exceed the 9% year-over-year annual growth projected for 2026. Since sales tax is the largest revenue source across the governmental funds, additional information is provided in the next couple of slides for your review. First, sales tax revenue is charted over 3 full years and the current year based on the month in which it is received by the town. Since the state collects the tax for the town, the revenue received this month was generated by sales that occurred 2 months ago. In other words, the orange bar in the month of May for 2026 represents sales tax from purchases that took place in March 2026. This explains why sales tax revenue in February is typically very strong, as the transactions were in the month of December during the holidays. The next slide takes the same data and adjusts the period to the revenue period, matching the month in which the sales occurred to the sales tax revenue. This gives us an indication of retail sales activity across the town each month, which helps us identify trends and projections. Year to date, through March 2026, retail sales are up a little over 3% year over year, just shy of the 5% projected in the budget of fiscal year 2026. And those are the slowest months of the year. All right, back to the governmental funds and a deeper look into the operating expenses across all departments. Again, with the timing of this report only encompassing 25% of the year and many one-time annual expenses like dues, subscriptions, and memberships taking place during these months, especially in IT, such as Cassell and Laserfish. While some GLs appear to be ahead of pace in expenses year to date, that will level out as the year progresses. Overwhelmingly, however, departments are at or below budgeted operating expenses, and finance and leadership will continue to monitor budget performance. Lastly, for you tonight is a comprehensive look at each fund's net revenue over expenditures, debt service payments, capital project spending, and grant revenue. The board adopted a budget for fiscal year 2026 that projected net revenue under expenditures of nearly $8.8 million for the year, which breaks down to about $2.2 million per quarter in fund balance spending. Considering the largest debt service payments in water and sewer funds are semi-annual, property tax revenue, LCSO payments, and many of the other factors I've spoken throughout this presentation, the town is currently under the estimated and budgeted amount of fund balance spending by about $200,000. While this is good news, please keep in mind that some of the fund balance spending was due to operation revenues below expenditures, and there's a large capital project that just broke ground in recent weeks. The first quarter gives us a glimpse into the budget performance of the fiscal year, but does not have enough concrete evidence at this point to determine potential outcomes. Thank you again for your time tonight and for your continued support. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Let's start with Trustee Blackstone.
I don't think I have any. Excuse me. I don't think I have any questions. I appreciate everything that you're doing, mostly to keep the residents up to kind of speed on what we're doing to try to keep our budget in line. I know that is just something that you hear from everybody in town right now, and it sounds good. I mean, I know, like you said, you don't want to be too promising with the first quarter, but if we could just do this 3 more times, that would be great. Yeah, like I said, I don't have any other questions. Just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Redavid. That was a great presentation. My question is about the presentation. When you gave the operating revenues under governmental funds, you just mentioned tax revenue. I know our tax revenue is broken down, property tax, sales taxes, and we divide those up under different funds, the general fund, the street fund, and so forth. Is there a possibility that under, instead of just one tax revenue, that we could list their property taxes, and then right under sales taxes? To me, I mean, going to the next slide where you saw the graphs and so forth like that, brought it into perspective. But I think it's good to remind people that when we bring sales taxes into the town, or we bring property taxes into the town, what that division is and what that apportionment of those revenues go into different funds?
Absolutely. It is split out in the actual treasurer's report, so I can bring that into the presentation as well. Thank you.
Trustee Barrett.
I don't have any questions, but I really appreciate how comprehensive this is with sales tax trends, especially with when it comes in and when you broke down versus when it's actually aligned with the sales period. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Mayor Pro Tem.
No questions. Just wanted to say thank you, Director Redavid, and really do appreciate the update on the status of the audit as always. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
On to the consent agenda. Will the clerk please read the title of items on the consent agenda?
May 26, 2026 Board of Trustees meeting minutes. Resolution 17-2026, a resolution of the Town of Wellington, Colorado, canceling a regular meeting on June 23rd, 2026. Resolution number 18-2026, a resolution of the Town of Wellington considering the approval of the Wellington Senior Resource Center, Inc. contract renewal. And resolution number 22-2026, a resolution of the Town of Wellington, Colorado, making appointments to the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Board.
Madam Mayor, if we can, could we get item 3 of the consent agenda set aside? Personally, I think it'd be great to hear from Dorothy and the representatives from the senior center of all the great things that they're doing, and instead of just a consent. And
May I have a motion to amend the agenda?
I would motion to amend the agenda for that as well. That sounds great.
If possible, could we move them to be first on the action items?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
May I have a second?
second,
Second.
Roll call, please.
On the motion to amend, Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
yes.
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daley.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, the motion to amend passes.
Resolution number 18-2026, the resolution of the Town of Wellington considering the approval of the Wellington Senior Resource Center Incorporated contract renewal will now be prior to action item 1. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
May the clerk call roll, please?
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daley.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. On to action items. If I could please invite members of the Senior Center and those representing the Senior Center to come up. You will be the unofficial official presenters of this item. We are talking about resolution number 18-2026, a resolution of the Town of Wellington considering the approval of the Wellington Senior Resource Center Incorporated contract renewal. I hope to hear more about it. Welcome, ladies.
Hello, I will kick us off. So I am the Town Senior Resource Center liaison. So I get the honors of working with this group, and I will let them speak about what they've been up to for the past year.
Thank you all. First of all, I'm Dorothy McClure, and I'm the current coordinator of the Wellington Senior Center, and I have been for the last 9 years. However, I'm retiring the end of this month and turning it over to Terry Mock, who will take my place. So you'll be dealing with her in the future. But as for what we've been doing, we've been very busy as usual. First of all, I want to thank you all for the support that the town has given us over the past by providing the senior center facilities, the Leaper Center for us to use, and the maintenance on the bus. Without those two, we couldn't do or offer any of the programs that we do for our local seniors. The senior bus is used to transport local seniors to and from medical-related appointments within a 15-mile radius around Wellington on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And they start at like 5:30 in the morning with dialysis patients, and they try to be done by about 2 in the afternoon. And then in between, they work in medical appointments for any resident of Wellington over 60. They don't have to be a member of the senior center. We also provide transportation for any senior center members who cannot drive or don't have transportation to come into the center for meals or programs or just to visit and hang out. And then we use the bus also for transportation for group outings, 2 days a month, usually on a Tuesday and Thursday. Actually, today we had 15 seniors and we went to the Black Bear Diner at Johnson Corner and had lunch, and it was delicious. And then we went to Buc-ee's and bought goodies. And then came back, but it was a fun outing. The transportation program is operated totally separate from the senior center. Funds are not commingled, and makes it a little more difficult when the government cut funding for transportation. And we really had to scramble last year to raise funds to supplement our expenses, and we managed. And we have enough to see us through for another year with our fundraising from last year. So that was good. We're still looking for different avenues to raise funds, but the pressure is off now for a while anyway. Our current membership for the senior center is 118 seniors, and that includes 26 new seniors this year. So I think that says a good point for the senior center. Word is getting out and people are enjoying coming, and we have a pretty good crowd. We hold 3 yearly fundraisers. The pancake breakfast, which was last weekend. It was a little slow, I guess, because I think the weather was just too nice. People, I think, were doing other things rather than coming for breakfast, but we still made a decent profit on it. So that was good. We also do the Christmas bazaar and lunch in the first Saturday in December. And we have started a new one. It's an afternoon high tea around Mother's Day. We've done it twice now, and that's been very popular and very successful. I think everyone who came enjoyed it this last year. The continuing activities for the center are senior haircuts every 6 weeks for $20, foot care every 8 weeks for $35 with a registered nurse. Friday lunch, which we ended last May, but it was paid for by a donation from Comcast. And we still have a little bit of that money left, but we're going to use it for special meals throughout the year. And we have switched to Volunteers of America meals every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday now. And so far they seem quite popular. We just started the 1st of June, so we don't have much history with it yet, but so far they've been good. Let's see, what else? Oh, we still have our 5-star band on Wednesday mornings for a couple of hours. They play a little country, a little Western, a little gospel, and very popular. We get a whole different crowd of people on Wednesdays than we have on Monday and Friday. We have a potluck the 3rd Wednesday of every month, and we will continue that even with the VOA meals. We just won't have a VOA meal on that Wednesday. The 2nd Wednesday, we celebrate birthdays for any one of our members that has a birthday during that month. Like I said, we do 2 outings a month to local restaurants, museums, or something, whatever. The senior center offers us opportunities for seniors to get together and visit, companionship, especially for seniors living alone. It's really nice to have some place to go and just sit and visit and interact with other seniors. And we play cards, 31 and maneuver being the most popular. But we have a small group of cribbage players that love their cribbage games. We also bring in outside speakers every so often to talk about subjects that are important to seniors health-wise or support groups and that. We have a book club for senior members that meets once a month. And we have a show and tell for our members for their craft or hobbies or something that they want to bring in and talk about. And we do a Tai Chi class every Wednesday morning for an hour with a Tai Chi instructor for balance. Our members have served the community in the past by helping with the fishing and bike derbies that are put on with Kiwanis. They help at the local food bank, and we participate in the Christmas parade. In closing, I want to thank you all for your support and hope you see your way to be able to help us in the future with the use of the room and support for the bus. Any questions?
Trustee Cannon, any comments or questions?
The only comment I have is we're going to miss you, Dorothy. You
Well,
know.
I'm still going to be here. I'll just be out there playing cards with
Well,
everybody.
it's about time. Look, I am so proud of what you guys are doing, and I'm sorry. Thank you.
You guys make me feel good.
Trustee Barrett.
Congratulations on your retirement. Thank you so much for all the support for our community. That's tremendous work. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, we couldn't do it without you guys.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I share the same comments. Thank you, Dorothy. We really appreciate all the service to the community, and we look forward to continuing to support the Senior Resource Center. So appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Trustee Blackstone.
Yeah, when you said you had a handful of activities, you certainly weren't kidding. I'm glad to see it. I really am. Also, the high tea was fantastic. If you remember me showing off my then 2-month-old baby, luckily he kept it together. And we got some amazing photos all dressed up as a family. So it was really nice to be a part of that. No, yeah, just thank you guys. Really glad we, Trustee Cannon made you guys come up here and share all this.
All your events are so delicious. I really like them between the high tea and pancakes and everything, bake sales. I love them. So I'm happy to support you guys. You're doing a great job with fundraising. There are a couple things I have to ask.
Okay.
And maybe it's like one of those show and tell days or something like that. But I would love to see if any of your members would want to talk to me about Wellarama and their memories or experiences of Wellarama of the past. They're long-term residents of Wellington and got to do those celebrations.
We do have a few members that have lived here most of their lives.
I would love to just talk to them, maybe a little storytelling, just to hear about how it went, and see if we can bring some of that back to Wellington today.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other thing is we've been working on our Post Master Plan, which includes feasibility study for community center.
Would love it.
So I would love to talk to a select few of you guys to see any feedback or stuff on the items that we've kind of come out in packets already to get your very focused feedback on those items. So hopefully we can do that in the near future.
Okay.
But I appreciate your service to our community. It's so important. And I love seeing everybody together. I think those fundraisers are great. I get fed all the time. So it's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
Madam Mayor, if
Yes.
I may, if we could have public comment before.
Oh, yes, please. Is there any public comment? There is not.
Okay.
I may have a motion to approve this resolution.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You got it.
I move to approve resolution number 18-2026, a resolution of the town of Wellington considering the approval of the Wellington Senior Resource Center Incorporated contract renewal.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
trustee Cannon,
Yes.
trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daly,
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Happy to work with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
On to action item 1, will the clerk please read the title of F1?
Public hearing and consideration of resolution number 19-2026, a resolution adjusting appropriations for the town of Wellington, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2026 and ending on December 21st, 2026.
I will now open the public hearing for this item. Nick Redavid, Finance Director and Town Treasurer, and Nathan Ewert, Deputy Director of Public Works, will present this resolution.
Hello again, Madam Mayor and Trustees. I am Nick Redavid, Finance Director and Town Treasurer, and here with Deputy Director of Public Works, Nathan Ewert, to present for your consideration Resolution number 19-2026, adjusting appropriations for fiscal year 2026 regarding the Water Fund's Advanced Metering Infrastructure, or AMI, capital project. You may notice that the budget of fiscal year 2026 refers to the project as automated rather than advanced. This resolution will also update the project name to industry standard terminology without changing the purpose or intent of the project at all. As this is also a public hearing in accordance with Colorado Revised Statute 29-1-106 for a supplemental appropriation in the budget of fiscal year 2026, public notice was published in the Coloradoan on June 5th, 2026. This agenda item should feel a little more like a setup for the following item rather than a standalone decision, so I'll walk through it that way. At a high level, we are updating appropriations in the capital projects of the Water Fund to reflect new information we didn't have when the budget was adopted, specifically the grant funding for the AMI project and updated cost estimates. Before getting into the numbers, I do want to set the expectation clearly on what this item is and what it is not. The resolution does not approve the project. It does not approve any contracts for the expenditures. Those decisions will be made by the board and other action items to be presented. If those items aren't approved, this action doesn't move the project forward on its own. What the resolution does is purely the mechanism that makes funding available in the budget so that if the other items are approved, the town is legally able to spend the unanticipated revenue. And that's an important distinction under Colorado budget law. Revenue received after the budget is adopted cannot be spent until the board formally appropriates it. This resolution is about adjusting appropriations in the budget, not making a policy or project decision. From a financial standpoint, the story here is positive. When the budget for fiscal year 2026 was adopted, there was $990,000 appropriated in capital projects of the Water Fund for the AMI project line item. Since then, the town has been awarded a grant from the Colorado Water Conservation Board for about $440,000. We also made a line item transfer of $70,000 within the Water Fund earlier this year to support the caustic injection automation capital project. So when you put all of that together, the total funding currently available for this project is about $1.36 million. On the cost side, as you'll hear more in upcoming agenda items, the updated project estimate, including a contingency, is about $1.3 million. This resolution is simply adjusting the appropriation to that level so that the budget matches the current expected cost. One piece I do want to highlight is what this means for the Water Fund overall. Even after increasing the project appropriation, we still end up with about $60,000 less in fund balance usage than originally planned. So we're effectively bringing in outside funding, covering the full cost of the project as currently estimated, and reducing reliance on reserves at the same time. To sum it up, resolution number 19-2026 is about making sure the grant funding is formally recognized, aligning the budget of fiscal year 2026 with where the project stands today, and putting the board in a position where you can make an informed decision on the next items. Staff recommends adoption of resolution number 19-2026. Thank you again for your time tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions on the financial side, and Deputy Director Ewert is here as well for anything more technical. Thank you.
At this time, we will ask questions. We will not do any deliberation. This is questions for understanding, please. Trustee Blackstone.
I'm going to hold off on my questions if that's all right.
Yep, sure. Mayor Pro Tem. Trustee Barrett.
No questions.
Trustee Cannon.
No questions.
Fantastic.
In that case, no
Yes, sir.
questions. I was hoping somebody else would spark.
All right, I'll open this public comment for this hearing. Are there any comments from the public on this item? I will now close public comment for the hearing. Yeah, it's time for deliberation. Feel free. Trustee Blackstone.
I just want to say, the finding the grant for this, I think, is exactly what the town is hoping that staff and we as the elected officials are doing. Being able to put that some of that money back into the water fund, I think is again just something that's on everybody's mind. And I think again, it's just as far as us trying to build that trust in the community and show that we are actively fighting. I think this does a lot of heavy lifting. So I just want to say, yeah, thank you guys for doing what we've asked and what the town has asked of us.
Trustee Barrett.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
Trustee Cannon.
I'm good, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to say congratulations, guys, on that $440,000 grant award. I mean, these are my favorite types of resolutions. Easy, right? So I just really appreciate the hard work on that, guys. So thank you.
Similar sentiment. This is an exciting time and a testament to the dedication of our staff in town for finding opportunities for Wellington and making it better. So I appreciate that so very much. Is there a motion?
I move to adopt resolution number 19-2026, a resolution adjusting appropriations for the town of Wellington, Colorado for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2026 and ending on December 31st, 2026.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Blackstone.
Yes.
Trustee Barrett.
Yes.
Trustee Cannon.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Yes.
Mayor Daly.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Will the clerk please read the title for item F3?
Resolution number 21-2026, a resolution authorizing funds for water replacement materials.
All right, Mr. Ewert will present on this item.
Haven't done this before, so Hannah, this is the, okay. I normally don't do PowerPoints. So hopefully this is the hardest thing I have to do tonight. Come on up.
Don't make me do this alone.
Yep, no. So good evening, Madam Mayor, trustees, Nathan Ewert, Deputy Director of Public Works. I also have Josh Matthews here with me. He's the engineer one with the Public Works Department. He's going to be the project manager if these projects move forward. So tonight I had intended to present on resolution 20-2026 and resolution 21-2026, which both are related to the advanced metering infrastructure project included in the 2026 Water Fund capital projects budget. However, due to some late legal comments that we received related to indemnification, warranty, liability, all the legal things, we decided to go ahead and ask to postpone that. And we do hope to bring that back on the July 14th meeting if possible. Just for knowledge, that the language that we're kind of going back and forth with, it's not about the contractor, it's not about the price, it's just about the legal terms. So we just wanted to make sure we could get through all the attorneys before we brought that back for approval. The hard part, see. Okay, so the timeline, with that being said, I'm going to proceed with my full presentation. You're going to see references to resolution 20-2026. Obviously that's been hopefully going to get moved to the July 14th meeting, but I'll just go through as is. The start of the advanced metering project actually dates all the way back to 2016 when we first started installing AMI meters. These meters have been installed through the town's distribution system each year. Additional meters were installed and purchased and installed by town crews. And to this date, we've transitioned approximately 75% of our meters to AMI compatible systems. In 2023, we took the next step in this project, which was a propagation study. We worked with Census, who is the meter manufacturer, to go ahead and complete that study. The study identified the need for 2 base stations with antenna to achieve comprehensive coverage of the existing town, as well as our projected near-term growth areas. In 2025, we actually went ahead and did a refresh of that propagation study, came up with the same results. If I jump ahead to the propagation slide here, green basically means good. You can see it's pretty much all green. We've got the entire town in there, as well as anything that could potentially be developed adjacent to town as well. So this system will last us for quite some time with the base stations that we hope to install. In 2024, the next step was we started looking for funding assistance. At that time, we applied for a federal Water Smart grant. 2025 passed. 2026, we didn't hear anything, so we just assumed we didn't get it. We were notified this year, I believe, recently, a couple weeks ago, a month ago or so, that we did not get it. But in 2025, we went ahead and submitted for a state of Colorado Water Conservation Board grant, and were successful in receiving that matching grant, which Nick just kind of went through, for up to $440,738. So with all that discussion on the AMI, you probably need to explain what AMI is, right? So advanced metering infrastructure, these meters are providing improved efficiency throughout our distribution system. There are operational efficiencies that we can realize. We no longer have to have crews driving around, touching meters, being in close proximity to the meters to read them. Everything goes through radio read, so it's automatic. This doesn't necessarily eliminate the need for the drive-bys, but it greatly reduces it. If we have to reread or something like that, you may still see drive-bys happening. Additionally, some of the best features of this system is the enhanced leak detection abilities and the ability to identify abnormal or continuous water usage. What that looks like as far as identifies is it sends a notification. In this instance, it would be to town staff. What this project is not providing is the ability to be connected to a customer-facing portal. That's additional software at additional cost. That's not currently in the scope of this project or within the budget. However, staff will get those notifications. We don't have the process yet, but staff receives a notification. We can either pass that along to the customer or send a crew out to check on things real time as we get those notices. That's still a process to be worked out as we get the software and kind of work through the bugs. So the work left to complete. Hitting the wrong button. So like I said, we have 75% of the meters installed on the screen. The remaining 25% of the meters that need to be replaced are shown in pink. This includes 196 new outside meter sets, as well as 967 3/4 inch and 1 inch meter swaps. And what I mean by swaps is it's already an outdoor meter set. So the contractor would just need to go in there and swap the meter and install a radio. Very, very minimal. However, at almost 1,000 of them, that would take a significant amount of time for any crew to complete. Additional work left to complete would be the purchase of the base stations and the software. And then to go into a little bit more in depth on the outdoor, what I mean by a new outdoor meter set is that's everything that's shown here in our standard detail 2-7. So we're digging a hole, installing a new meter pit along the current service line. It's a little invasive. There's very specific language in the contract when it does come back as far as how the landscape restoration will work. what types of equipment the contractor is allowed to use. We're not going to allow mechanical equipment. Very similar to how Comcast kind of came in. It's either digging or vac truck. There's just too many utilities located in front yards, and we don't want to cause more damage and more work. So then moving on to the budget discussion. Resolution 20-2026, this resolution was intended to be for the installation only of the remaining 196 meters and pits, as well as swapping out the remaining 967 3/4 inch and 1 inch meters. This project was published for bid on BidNet with 3 bids received, and the low bid was Core and Main and along with their installation subcontractor of DB Utilities. Resolution 20-2026 would have approved the installation contract for amounts of $415,099. A change order was subsequently prepared with a separate scope by the same companies, Core and Main and DB Utilities, to install the base stations and antenna, with a total cost for that change order of $32,850. The total cost of that contract with the change order included would have been $447,949.00. This resolution we're hoping to bring back at a later date, hopefully July 14th, with all the contractual language revisions reviewed by attorneys and everything in place. Moving on, Resolution 21-2026 is for material costs only. This resolution authorizes the purchase of all remaining meters, radios, meter pits, and various fittings needed to replace all meters with AMI compatible systems. The cost associated with this resolution is, it says meter radio installation, but it should just be the material costs on that slide, is $433,130.92. And then the new service pit materials is $163,277.44. Total cost approved by the resolution is $596,408.36. If approved tonight, a purchase order for the materials in the amounts shown would be generated by the finance department and then executed. Remaining work to be included, there's a lot with this system, but the base station purchase is an additional $87,016. There's a software one-time installation cost of $32,927. This involves installation of the software as well as training on the software for town staff. Then there's an additional annual software cost, which is listed as the year 1 software cost in this instance, and that's $20,296.00 for a total remaining cost of $140,239.00. These remaining costs are within staff signing authority. Currently, the software contract is under review by the attorneys. There was some language in there about a multi-year commitment, and that's not something we can do. So we're working through that. It's not anticipated to be an issue. Core and Main says Census runs into this all the time, and they can just modify the contract language for a year at a time, but it's still in attorney's hands. So we're anticipating once that's through, we'd be able to sign it under staff authority at that $140,000 amount. So in summary, with the resolution 19-2026 passing, the total budget is $1.3 million, and the total costs as presented tonight are $1,184,596.36. Moving on to just kind of talk about the future schedule, which is going to be slightly modified given the delay to the original contract. We'll proceed if 21-2026 is approved. We would proceed with ordering of the materials. We would have to wait on any installation work until that contract can come back to the board for approval. I do anticipate the timeline for substantial completion, as noted in this slide. I think it's in November. That's probably going to slide about a month to account for the month change, with bringing this back hopefully in July. given that, that's a lot more words than I'm normally used to saying. So are there any questions on the presentation?
Questions for understanding.
Yeah.
Trustee Barrett.
It wouldn't have any effect if we just went ahead and ordered the materials now while we waited on the finalizing of the construction, right?
There is not. We're actually anticipating some lead times on the items. It's all through core and main, so you know,
Will there be a delay in ordering the materials
If-
if we have to hold on the construction aspect?
if 21-2026 is approved tonight, we'll probably go ahead and execute the purchase order as soon as possible so they can get, 897 meters and 100 plus the 167 other meters. They don't necessarily have all those parts in their warehouse, which is just down the road.
Okay,
So they could certainly get all those into the warehouse. We'll have conversations about how many they can bring up here at a time because we don't have a ton of storage.
gotcha.
But it would account, there's gonna be some delay, but it's gonna allow to absorb some of that lead time on the materials.
Okay, so overall,
It's
it's just
not, yeah, it's,
best to go
not
ahead
bad.
and order it if we can. Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Cannon.
No questions, but I just want to say that this has been a desire of mine going back to 2017 when I came in about getting these AMI meters in because of the reduction of the workload of the plus it's also a better metering system. And I would like to think that maybe sometime in the future we can get some of that that forward-facing, customer-facing interface, because that would be beneficial to our residents as well. But good work, thank you.
I believe that's the plan, is to get that customer facing. I had to look at Megan for that thumbs up.
Trustee Blackstone.
Well, that answered my first question. Is this going to set us up for that customer facing side, or is that a totally separate avenue? So I appreciate that. The only other question, again, I've brought this up whenever I hear there's going to be an impact on staff, especially within the current kind of model that staff will be potentially the ones hearing about potential leakages and things like that. I would just appreciate it if you guys keep us apprised on that workload. So that we're just finding out what that looks like. Again, if we're just continually asking folks on staff, hey, can you also do this? Can you also do that? I want to have a little pressure gauge on what we're asking for folks as we learn that.
Definitely, thank you. A lot of the notifications, I mentioned like continuous use and high usage. There are other programmable notifications. So I think a lot of that will get figured out once we get the software, and especially once we get the training. And I think we could provide some sort of update, however that looks.
Yeah, through Patty.
Yeah.
That would be, or Miss Garcia.
Yep.
Yeah, we would appreciate that.
That's a great idea. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I share exactly the same comments that Trustee Blackstone and Trustee Cannon had. So I've been looking forward to this project for quite a long time, and I think our residents are really going to appreciate it down the road once we can get them, some of these notifications and that sort of thing. So very cool stuff, and appreciate all the work.
Thank you. Similar comments. So, and this would have helped me several times in the past when I left my water on overnight, but saved me some dollars. Right. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, bringing it back to the board. Is there any deliberation or opinions, questions beyond that? May I hear a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 21-2026, a resolution authorizing funds for water replacement materials.
Second.
Will the clerk please take roll?
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Barrett,
Yes.
Trustee Blackstone,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Daley.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. On to reports. Our town attorney, Mr. Kumley, do you have any reports for us? Thank you much. Town Administrator Garcia.
No report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. All your staff communications are in the packet. Does anybody have any outstanding questions for those items? Also included in that is the Board of Trustees. Well, that's the Board of Trustees planning calendar. So that we know. Board reports. Let's start with Trustee Blackstone, please.
No reports.
Thank you. Trustee Cannon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last week I had two very good meetings with both the Upper Front Range Transportation Planning Region, or the TPR, as I'm going to call it from now on. And also on that same day and that evening was with the North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization, which I will refer to as the MPO. So both of these organizations are charged with regional transportation planning. Every state in the union has to do that. We have been part of the TPR for a long time, ever since it was created. And the intent that I've discussed with the board before and also with others is that we eventually will feel it be more beneficial for us to move into the MPO. We share more transportation planning and more transportation corridors with our region neighbors. The MPO members include Fort Collins, Timnath, Windsor, Loveland, Greeley, Eaton, and even Berthoud. But in the TPR, we share transportation planning with Estes Park, Brush, and Fort Morgan, 2 counties away. So these were just good introductory meetings. I did meet a lot of people that I knew from when I used to attend the TPR meetings years ago. And we're trying to set the stage, and I had a great debrief with Administrator Garcia and Public Works Director Bob Gowing. So nothing happened at these meetings worth relating at this point. This is just about setting the stage for that eventual ask to move. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cannon. Trustee Barrett.
Nothing to report.
Mayor Pro Tem. All right. I'm wearing my hat today. It's because right before this, we did an unveiling of a new sign that says, "Welcome to Wellington, home of the Eagles, state champions." And I'm so excited. This amazing partnership and idea that was brought to us from Coach Peoples in celebration of our state championship, Go Eagles, for 2025. And also included on the sign are basketball and previous football state champions, which spanned 1952, 1953, and 1957. So it's really exciting to celebrate the wins of our historic past of Wellington High School and our new ones. There is plenty of room on the sign for additional sports and additional years. So we are expecting to have plenty of championships for 2026 and beyond to add to these signs. So we'll continue to do that. So Wellington is a great place to live, and it's a place that I'm very proud to call home. I love every opportunity for celebrations and making sure that people come together. And nothing brings people together quite like some Friday night lights. So I'm very happy to celebrate that with the school, with the district, with our sports coaches, with our students. So I'm happy to report on that. So that was fantastic news. We also broke ground today on the new Frisbee golf course, which will be actually multi-sports. And I always say it wrong, so I'm not going to say it. But there's like a soccer version and a golf version and a Frisbee version that you can play on the same course. The course is being redone by professional Frisbee golf course makers. And it just broke ground today. So concrete's going to go in the very near future, and we'll have a brand new amenity. A big part of this too is that, although maybe ADA compliance isn't the easiest on a Frisbee golf course, is we're actually reaching that. And then improving safety measures of not having to cross our Box Elder. So you're crossing it on a street and bridge. So really great advancements. PROS has been working on this. Parks Rec, Open Spaces and Trails, that advisory group, has been working on this for years with the help of some advocates for the Frisbee disc community. So really excited to get to go see that. in the image of that. All right, those are my updates for tonight. So based on that, I do adjourn this meeting at 7:29. Thank you all for being here.